Hello, everyone. We are back here with the Fireside Chat with representatives of XPRIZE AI. So here we have Devin, the director of XPRIZE Foundation AI, and Niyama, tech lead for AI, right?
Yes. Nice to see everyone.
Cool. So can you please present yourself just a little bit and tell to our audience what are you working on, like basically from perspective of your position in the foundation, because I'm sure it's really huge. Devin, maybe you.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm that important, but thank you. So I'll go first, and then Nima can jump in. So Nima and I co-run together the IBM Watson AI XPRIZE, which is a particular XPRIZE challenge under the XPRIZE Foundation umbrella. So our job is to operationalize that on a day-to-day basis. So the AI for Good the IBM Watson AI XPRIZE is essentially about accelerating the AI for Good narrative. So our job is to work with the competing teams, set up the judging framework, and make sure that the program runs smoothly. And we're in the last year or so of our competition. So my job is more of a program manager, director, lead kind of role, and then Nima can explain his job because it's much more challenging than mine.
Thank you, Devin. Yeah, my role is more technical. I work with the teams, I work with the judges. I like to describe it as herding cats, if those cats were AI powered. So yeah, I mean, in the last year, I did a lot of work, traveled the world, went to conferences, worked with the teams, made sure that we captured their content and validated what they were doing in the fields as well. And then towards this year, hopefully we'll help those guide the teams to get to the finals and then to the grand prize ceremony as well.
Wow, that sounds really amazing. I mean, you're just working on the age of the technology, and this is so fascinating. Okay, let's put aside my emotions. Let's move to the questions we've come up with. So what is the incentive competition? Can you explain the concept standing behind it and actually behind the XPRIZE Foundation?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of these questions, I'll take a first stab, and then Nima will fill in the gaps. And so XPRIZE is founded on a very simple idea, and that's the idea of an incentivized competition, right? The idea is that, there's a lot of it's essentially crowdsourcing on steroids, to use an American term. So the idea is that, anyone in the world can solve these challenges. So what we try to do at XPRIZE is identify these challenges facing humanity, and where they're not being solved, and use an incentive competition model to drive breakthroughs from the rest of the world. That incentivized competition model really brings in a lot of great minds and drives insights and innovative ideas that you would not get through a normal grant or research and development program. The incentivized competition, idea has existed for a long time. And our founder, Peter Diamandis, actually was reading a book about Charles Lindbergh. So he flew across the Atlantic, and that was actually the result of an incentivized prize model. So what Peter did was take that idea and scaled it to today. And as everyone knows, the first competition we had was the Ansari XPRIZE, which is about privatizing space. And now, as a result of that, you have SpaceX and Blue Origin and all that. So, we run competitions across a variety of domains. And it's a really simple idea, but it's a really powerful idea. Nima, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you did a good job.
Okay, perfect. Is this like the first AI competition by XPRIZE? You mentioned already the first one, Ansari competition. And another one I remember was about building the medical device that can substitute 10 of doctors or something like that, like in the Star Trek movie.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think we've run 13 to 15 XPRIZes to date. And I forget the total amount of prize purse, but this competition that Nima and I are in charge of is the first competition solely focused on AI. That said, I think it would be naive to not point out that AI is really embedded in almost everything we do at XPRIZE. And Nima and I have been a vocal proponent of that within the organization, that, yeah, we're running the AI XPRIZE, but the truth is AI is a very broad field. And there's elements of AI baked into all of our competitions.
Mm-hmm. I think it's important to note that the AI for Good movement was kicked off in some ways by the AI XPRIZE itself. So back in 2016, when they announced the competition at the TED stage, AI for Good really wasn't a real thing. But since then, as you know, Microsoft is doing it, Google is doing it, all these other companies are doing it. They have their own AI for Good or AI for social good movements. So I think from a movement perspective, it's been very successful as well.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So can you please explain what does it mean AI for good? We got some highlights about it from the video, but also I'd like to hear your personal approach to that, your personal understanding of this.
I can.
Yeah, go. You want to go first on this one?
Yeah, absolutely. So AI for Good or AI for social good is essentially using artificial intelligence to improve humanity. Now, many companies can claim that they're using AI to improve humanity, whether it's an app or it's some sort of technology. That's true. But what we really mean by AI for Good is targeting problems that aren't being solved, targeting communities that are underserved, and using the technology to improve their outcomes and improve their lives. In practice, what that oftentimes means is that you are taking a existing AI technology, so normal, not groundbreaking, just basic AI, and applying it to a novel data set or a novel population and solving their problems. So whether that's trying to cure malaria in Africa, or whether that's trying to figure out the gender of a chicken egg, that's what we're talking about when we're talking about AI for Good. And it can be in education, it can be medical, it can be about humanities and the workforce. It could be about the environment. There are all these different applications of AI for Good.
Actually, if I can just build up, I love Nima's answer, and I want to throw it from the non-technical perspective because I don't have a technical background in AI. For me, I look at it as where we are with AI right now is we're at narrow intelligence, right? And we're moving towards general intelligence. There's debates about when we will get there, but there's no debating that AI will be part of humanity going forward, right? So this idea is, how can we develop human and machine collaboration to develop a better future state? And what better way to do that than demonstrate AI for good through concrete proof points, right? And to Nima's point, the Sustainable Development Goals are due in less than 10 years. And these are solvable through the use of AI technologies and a lot of big data. So, this competition is not about the most groundbreaking AI, and Nima and I have been upfront about that. It's really about how humans and machines can collaborate together and what AI for good means. It's about that balanced dialogue, and it's important to watch those Black Mirror episodes and see how AI can go bad. But it's also important to understand how AI can help us as humans.
Oh yeah, thanks for pointing out the Black Mirror. I'm just rewatching it now actually and comparing what we have already got from it in comparison to the time when I first time watched it. It's really changing fast. Okay, next question would be, how do you make it to collaborate with such huge companies like IBM? And why do they decide to provide such huge prizes to the competitions like this?
Nima, did you want to take first stab on that one?
Yeah, sure. So historically, XPRIZE has collaborated with individuals, large organizations and companies, and even nonprofits to put together prize competitions. Each group has a different motive for trying to accomplish this. Individuals oftentimes, like the Ansari XPRIZE, as the Ansari family was very interested in space, and they wanted to move that industry forward. For companies like Google and IBM who've done prizes with us in the past, sometimes it's about marketing and proving that they are good stewards of humanity and want to give back. But also it's about creating a marketplace and creating a ecosystem that doesn't exist before. The Google Lunar XPRIZE, for example, it was about building a lunar economy and companies that could actually land on the moon. And this is, of course, back when Google was interested in doing moonshots, literal moonshots. Same thing with IBM. IBM wanted to build this AI for good narrative and this ecosystem. And it's both a good PR thing, but it's also an ecosystem building thing so that these companies and these organizations all around the world, literally from the United States all the way to Germany and Australia and Israel, they are interested and see how IBM's technologies can be used to promote this AI for Good movement. That doesn't mean that the teams have to use the technology that the company is providing, the sponsor is providing, but they are still offering those solutions as well to the teams as a nice to have or a benefit.
Okay. Then you wanted to add something?
I mean, no, that was a perfect answer. So.
I really like how you collaborate. Like, I can imagine working in your team. I think it is really funny. Okay, so next question I had. So how does it actually work? I mean, you got the applications from many countries around the world. And I have here kind of two questions. So first one is, which countries are the most active in sending the applications to you? And which countries would you name like have the best quality of the applications, or maybe the best understanding what you are doing actually? Like, can you name some countries where this is very actively evolving?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting question. I'm going to avoid answering the second one about which countries have the best quality of like solutions, but I'll start off at a very high level, and I'll be transparent. You know, XPRIZE really believes that anyone can compete in our competition. So we really are trying to have a global impact. Are we successful at that? I don't think so. You know, to be honest, a lot of our competitors are from North America and Europe. And I think we want to, you know, if we really believe that anyone in the world has a great idea, then we really need to expand our footprint. That's why, like, you know, we want to do these global conferences. We want to get a better outreach. You know, we have teams from Asia and sub-Saharan Africa, but the truth is there's not enough, you know, and great ideas can come from anywhere. And we really need, as an organization, want to improve that. So, you know, that's from a general XPRIZE perspective. AI, we've had a little bit more luck in terms of a global footprint. But I still think we can do better. I mean, you know, I wish we had more teams from sub-Saharan Africa in our competition than advanced, but, you know, that's a lesson learned on our end. So, Nima, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, in terms of the AI XPRIZE, in the semifinals, we have 10 teams from 6 different countries, the United States, Canada, Germany, Norway, Israel, Australia, and a few I'm forgetting at the moment. But as you can see, most of them are based in North America and Europe. But to remedy that, we are, especially for some of these prizes that we are launching or have launched, like the Rainforest Prize or the Zero Waste Mining Prize that we're targeting, we are making an active push to recruit teams from South America, from Africa, from Southeast Asia, because we believe that especially if you want to solve the problems in those communities, you need to have teams from those communities. And even to be fair to the AI XPRIZE, we have a team from Israel, but they do all their work in Africa. So they do their work in Kenya, in Ethiopia, and we had another team that was based in New York, but they did their work in Mozambique. So even though some of the teams are still based in North America, we do have more of a global representation as well.
Yeah, I think that's logically because if you would like to tackle the global challenges, which are actually coming from the emerging markets on the first place, you need to go and talk with these people in order to understand their pain. That's the absolutely right approach. And so that's actually a reason that why we have invited you to talk at Touch Conference, because we also want to spread the word about the foundations like you are, so that more people here started taking part in it and could understand that that's actually possible to get into semifinals, finals, get the prize and solve the challenge. I mean, it's absolutely possible, and I really believe in that. Okay, next question in regards to the application. So how do it actually work? I mean, the team has submitted the application. What then waits for them? Sorry.
I,
How the process
I can
works.
start with that one. So during the team recruitment phase of a competition, so competitions typically run from 3 to 5 years. Let's just say 4 years for simplicity's sake. During that first year, we run team recruitment, and during that phase, teams will submit usually a written application in which they state the proposal for whatever the competition that they're talking about. Again, let's just take the Rainforest Prize for simplicity's sake. During the first year, teams will submit how they are going to measure the biodiversity of the rainforest. This is my proposal. We're going to build this robot, and it's going to run around in the trees and do this. And then typically at that stage, we get anywhere from 100 to 150 submissions, written submissions. We will then have judges who are independent. So XPRIZE never decides who moves forward. It's always an independent judging panel. They will get all the reports and kind of go through them and decide which ones are most credible and realistic from, what's the team composition like? What's the technology? Does this really make sense? Are they crazy, or are they inspirational, right? There's it's a fine line. And then they will decide the number of teams to move forward to the next round. Again, depending on the number of rounds and the number of competitions. For example, the Rainforest Prize, I think you go directly into the semifinals. So they'll pick the top 20 teams they believe are the most likely. And then for the next rounds, so once you actually get to the more serious rounds, it becomes a show me what you're doing competition. So again, for the Rainforest Prize as an example, they will actually test their systems in a rainforest environment, whether that's in Brazil or Southeast Asia or somewhere like that. So 20 teams will actually go deploy their technologies, and judges will judge how well the technology does at, in this case, measuring the biodiversity of the rainforest. Then once you go from the semifinals, you go to the final competition, again, like a year, and then at that point they win their prize. And even though the competition is won, it's not over. So even after they win, there's after prize impact work to be done. So XPRIZE makes sure that their technologies can be deployed, that teams can have connections, they can get funding if they need it, to make sure that the innovative solutions that they come up with are actually deployed into the ecosystem.
If I can, can I build off that really quick, because that was perfect roadmap for how XPRIZE competitions will work. One thing I failed to do in the beginning of this conversation was illustrate how different the AI XPRIZE is compared to all of our other XPRIZE. So typically an XPRIZE is here's our moonshot. It could be literally going to the moon in some cases. The AI XPRIZE is an open competition. So we ask teams from around the world, pick your own challenge facing humanity, like Nima said, but use AI to tackle it. So really we had it was all these different XPRIZes in one. You had a team working on education, a team working on child identification, a team working on combating malaria, a team working on preventing drug addiction, all using AI. And those are just 4 teams. So it's been a very interesting competition to run. So for us, we did a lot of paper submissions. We had our judging panel kind of evaluate all those submissions across a uniform criteria, which Nima can get into. I think we have a question on that later. So it's been a very interesting competition that it's open in that sense. So it's hard to run, but to Nima's point, the impact of this competition has been demonstrating the AI for good narrative. If we had just picked one field like AI in education or AI in health, I don't think the impact of AI for good would have been as significant. Sorry, that was a little bit of a tangent.
Okay, thank you for adding that point. Actually, I just got one more question just between our other questions. You mentioned that sometimes you are getting some really crazy ideas. Yeah, I think you got some of them. How is it really possible to distinguish between the brilliant moonshot idea and a really crazy one? Because I remember the same situation when we ran the Global Impact Challenge competition in Ukraine for climate change problem solutions, and it was really sometimes hard to identify which team we should really invite to the boot camp and work further, and who were really even somehow dangerous, I would say, especially coming from somewhere like nuclear power industry, etc. I mean, sometimes it's really hard to understand if this guy is a real genius or it's something just crazy man from the street. I mean, how do you solve this?
I think the key to that is good judges. So because XPRIZE is not the one deciding who gets to move forward, we have to make sure that we pick the best in class judges with a diverse perspective to be able to evaluate the teams. There's a danger as well if you only pick, for example, academic judges, right? Only professors. They will have a bias towards the type of teams that they select. So maybe they will select good teams, but they will select similar teams, and that is also a problem. For example, with the Ocean Discovery Prize, it's important to understand that yes, the team that won that competition was a very well established, team that had done technology underwater and had worked with James Cameron before. So it's like, yes, that team is likely to win, and they won. But in our top 10, we had a team of high schoolers who were competing. So kids actually built technology, and they were able to compete, and then they won a bonus prize actually because the judges were so impressed with them. So it's very important for this judging panel to be very strong and very technically competent to be able to say that guy's crazy, or that seems very unlikely, or this is a crazy idea, but they are bringing together a very good team that may be able to do it. But also, just from a perspective of the viewpoints of problem solving and representation, to be able to understand, yes, maybe we should not have all these teams who are just, they look all the same. Maybe we want to have a diverse viewpoints and have different types of teams be able to compete, because that's where you can get the really great breakthroughs.
Okay, I see. Thank you. So it's all about judges. I will note that for the future competitions. By the way, another question I had in my mind is, how do you actually work with universities or research institutions? Because, for example, in our region, historically, I mean Central Eastern Europe, historically, we had a really strong engineering departments and IT departments and physics department. I mean, like all the scientific and engineering and IT related departments in the universities. But now I wouldn't say that they are producing that much of patents or creating some breakthroughs. Um, do you reach out also to like more university-based and research institutions like backed by governments, not just private ones? I mean, how do you work with them? How do you maybe encourage them?
Yeah, I can start with this one as well. Yes, the answer is definitely yes. Universities have historically often competed in our competitions. So university-based teams have built their technology and worked with us. But what we're doing now is we're formalizing those relationships. So we have official partnerships with major universities in the United States and around the world. And these partnerships include everything from potential judging, data, teams, people able to compete in these competitions, and even building curriculum for these universities to be able to train their students or help improve their students, and even have interns and internships with XPRIZE or the competing teams as well. So it's very important to get the universities involved at multiple stages, because a university is such a diverse group of people with different interests. You can tap into them for teams, you can tap into them for judges, you can tap into them for problem solvers and even collaborators and after prize impact work as well. And it's also, again, and very important, and we're trying to do this, it's very important to have global university networks. So, don't just, have Stanford and Berkeley and Harvard on your partner list, right? You need to have global representation from all around the world, because that cross collaboration is what can lead to really great breakthroughs as well.
I see. Yeah, actually, the internship program, I think it's a really amazing opportunity for students. Do you still run it?
Yes, yes and no. Yes, we definitely have interns. Unfortunately, as I'm sure you're aware, the coronavirus put a damper in our program. We actually had a very large internship program going, and was about to even get bigger over this summer. But we had to pause that because it's much harder to have internships through Zoom and over the internet. So we do still have some interns. My favorite story is we had a judge on our AI XPRIZE, and he emailed me out of the blue and said, "Hey, my brother is a PhD student. Do you have any interesting internships?" And I was like, actually, someone at XPRIZE asked me, do you know anyone who is doing a PhD in this area? So I was able to play matchmaker, and he's actually an intern for us now.
Yeah, that's marvelous. Okay, so getting back to the judges actually and the criteria. So as we could see from the video, you have 4 criteria for selecting the teams for the next round. So they are technical validity, real world impact, scalability, ethics, and safety. Could you please elaborate more on them? I mean, like, what does it mean, technical validity?
Absolutely. Since I did the technical work, I can answer this question. So technical validity is basically how well is the technology performing. So teams will state that we have a medical classification system that is 90% accurate. Then it's up to the judges and the teams to evaluate whether that is whether that technology is actually doing what it says it's doing, or whether it's not performing up to standards. So technical validity is that component of it. Is the technology working? It doesn't have to be sophisticated, but does it do what it says it does? The next point is real world impact. Oftentimes technologists and engineers will build technology and then not deploy it in the real world, or not field test it with customers. That doesn't work for us. We need to see that if you build a technology that supposed to educate children, have you actually tested it? Have you actually deployed it to children? And have you actually gotten results to show that you are improving the educational outcomes of those kids? So that's very important during the life of the prize itself, because this is a show me prize. This is an accomplishment prize. This is not I promise I'll do something in the future prize. That being said, scalability is also important, because while you want to be able to show that you've done something now, you've been able to build your technology and demo it essentially, you also want to convince the judges that you are able to scale this technology to a large problem and a large group of people and solve a very big global problem. And that builds an interesting dichotomy in the prize, because some teams are very good at real world impact, so they were able to accomplish a lot currently because their problem was easier to solve, but that leaves less room for scalability and being able to scale to a larger problem. But some teams pick much more difficult problems where you have less proof points now, but if they can really solve this, it can scale to millions or even billions of people. So that's kind of, the judges have to weigh those criteria against one another. And then finally, ethics and safety. Ethics is at the core of everything we do at AI or XPRIZE, and it's very important when you come to AI. As I'm sure your audience is very familiar, there are many problems with unethical AI, whether that's biased data sets, whether that's the inappropriate usage of technology. You have to be very careful and cognizant of how you are building your technology, and whether you're building those biases and issues into the system itself. So we work with our teams during their technology development phase to basically go through a checklist of I think it's like 90 questions to prompt them to think about the problems, because oftentimes as a startup, you don't mean to build bad AI or unethical AI. It's just that you never thought about the problem. So if we can get you early and have you think about those issues, more than likely you will actually address those issues as you're building your technology, instead of deploying your technology and saying, oops, we built something that was unethical.
You mentioned you have 90 points for like ethical
It was
check.
the ethical checklist was we work with a professor of ethics from a university, and also an organization .everyone over in the UK. And yeah, it's very long, and it has to be very long when you're dealing with all types of technology. If you have a medical team and an educational team and an environmental team, you have to ask all these questions of them. The teams were annoyed that it was really, really long, but I think by the end of the process, they were happy to have gone through it, because again, it asked questions that they weren't thinking about and allowed them to be better about addressing those issues as they're moving forward.
Can we see those questions? Actually, I think that every startup building any kind of technology should go through it, like seriously, especially those who are working with data, with big data.
Yeah.
I mean, is it accessible?
Yeah, Devin, I think we have a PDF version of it. I don't know if it's online yet or not.
No, it's not. And, I think this is something we've been thinking about, and this question will just accelerate it. I think we would like to deploy it publicly in the next few months. So as we do that, we'll share it out, because it's a free resource for everyone, and yeah, we will get on that. And on a side note, I think this is like, there's a lot of benefits to competing in XPRIZEs beyond the incentive of winning the big prize purse, right? And I think one thing XPRIZE does well is we are a convener, and we provide a lot of great resources. So not only do we bring you into a strong ecosystem, but like this ethical scorecard, the ROI on something like that is hard to measure, but it's really valuable to these companies and teams. So yes, it was part of the judging criteria, but it helps them build their products in a more ethical way, whether or not they advance in the competition. So kudos to Nima for putting that together with the professor.
Okay, good. I would really love to see that list, and maybe also play around it as the team from MIT did with ethical decision making for self-driving cars. I mean, it's really important thing for any kind of technology. We actually had a talk today about cybersecurity for startups as well, because yeah, that's very important, especially here in our part of the world. Okay, let's move to the better side. How do you support the teams during the competition? I mean, like you're testing them, you're testing their technology, you're testing them based on the scalability. But apart from that, what are you doing with them? Do they actually move all to your office, or do they stay at their places whenever they are, and you're just working
Yeah,
remotely with
I'll
them?
take a first stab at this, and then Nima can piggyback off of it. No, the teams don't move to where we are. All these competitions are conducted in a virtual environment. The only thing that changes is if, there's a certain testing phase that requires the teams to come together. So to Nima's point, sometimes when you get to a semifinalist round, and if it's a hardware competition, then we'll bring those teams together to a testing site. But I think, in terms of what we provide to the teams, I really think it's this access to this incredible ecosystem. So, I know on a personal level, I've never worked in an organization like XPRIZE where there's so many smart people in our ecosystem. So these teams are provided resources to some of the smartest minds in the world, and that helps them build their better products. I also think XPRIZE does a phenomenal job of marketing these companies and these teams, and that's a ROI that's really incredible for these teams. So there's a lot of benefits to just competing in XPRIZE. There's the notoriety, there's the marketing, there's the access to the free resources that are really, you can't get out in the open market. Nima, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, as part of our impact work as well, we go to many conferences, so teams will be able to get speaking opportunities at major conferences in their industries. Additionally, there is this effective kind of approved by XPRIZE. So if a team goes through the competition, especially if you get to the semifinal or final rounds, it means that your technology has been validated by a group of judges who are best in class in their industry. So even if you don't win, oftentimes you'll be able to raise money off of that. And we also, with XPRIZE Impact Work, we also do roadshows with VCs and investors to get money into these teams and to their technologies. And then the last piece is around data and access. So we have partnerships with many organizations around the world, both from compute to data, with NOAA and other organizations as well moving forward. So being able to get access to data is another cool piece of this as well.
Oh yeah, I can imagine how much data they actually need to go through in order to prepare the like ready to go product. Wow. So that's amazing. And do they get the funding on the way before they getting into the finals or something? Do you have already such cases? Which you can
Yeah,
share with
absolutely.
us?
So it's important to understand the incentivized prize model is basically a big carrot at the end of the road. And what we want the teams to do is go out there and fundraise and get money additionally on top of that to get to the finals. What we see is oftentimes a 10x investment in teams. And so if you have a $10 million prize, $100 million will be invested in all of the teams combined as they move forward. We even have teams that are so successful at fundraising they drop out of the competition, which to us is a good thing, right? If a team raises $20 million and is like, you know what, I don't need to do this competition anymore, I'm like, good, great job, right? So that's happened. It's rare, of course, but it definitely happens. And interestingly enough, even in prizes where the prize fails, so like the Google Lunar X Prize, which was about landing on the moon, no one won that competition. Yet that led to half a dozen companies that are successful and are now getting contracts. Over $400 million is invested in these companies. And one of them recently signed a $100 million contract with NASA. So even when a competition fails, if it's designed properly and the teams are competing over a long period of time, it can build an ecosystem where those teams are successful and get lots of money as well, even if they don't win the XPRIZE itself.
And in the end, I think that what the teams that are taking part in any of the XPRIZE competitions, they are actually moving the technology and technology deployment and technology popularization forward a lot. I mean, all this combined effort really moves the whole humanity forward. I mean, just take a look at the competition. What did it do? We now almost have the space
Yeah.
tourism. I just dream to get the ticket and go.
I mean, it's a great point. I mean, without the Ansari X Prize, when would the private space industry exist? Or maybe it would exist, but it would have taken longer to get there. But that was the domino. That was the first domino to really accelerate the private space industry. So that sort of impact is like, it's hard to measure in numbers.
Yeah, that's really marvelous. Okay, can you please tell briefly about the teams? I know they have videos on the website, right? So everyone who's watching us can also go to the XPRIZE AI website and see the video presentations of the teams. But just briefly, can you describe what they're?
Yeah, I can take a stab, and then Nima can fill in the gaps. I mean, I just want to reiterate that right now where we are in the competition is we have 10 semifinalists, and in the coming months we'll announce our 3 finalists who move on to the last phase of the competition, which will take us through next year. But the 10 semifinalists are working on like so many different products. We have AI to combat sex trafficking. We have AI to combat malaria. We have AI to treat mental health depression. So I don't know, Nima, you want to piggyback off those?
Yeah, I have the list here. So as you mentioned, AFRED Health does AI for mental health. Clean Robotics is actually a smart trash can that automatically sorts your trash using AI. Deep Drug is a university-based team that is using AI to find novel molecules for bacteria that is resistant to treatments, current treatments. Element Inc. Not Element AI. Element Inc. is a startup that uses biometric information to give children identity in the developing world. So essentially using your hands and your ears and other parts of your body to have a digital ID card. It's a really cool technology. XPRIZE is another one of our university teams that uses AI as a virtual tutor and a virtual TA in a university setting to be able to work with the students and educate them. Iris AI uses AI as a virtual research assistant to discover knowledge and to find topics that you may not have been able to find during your research. Machine Genes is another university team that is using a novel AI technology to combat brittle diabetes. So it's a specific type of diabetes, and they're using AI to treat that diabetes. Marinus Analytics is the team that is using AI to combat sex trafficking, as Devin mentioned. Orbum AI is a team that is using MRI technology and AI to determine the gender of chicken eggs. And the reason this is important is because we only use the female chicken eggs. We basically let the male chicken eggs hatch, and then we kill them all. So if you could figure out the gender of the chicken eggs much sooner, it's much more humane, and it also saves a lot of waste as well. And then finally, Zap Malaria is a team that is using AI to combat malaria treatment and find better ways to combat malaria as well.
About Iris AI, they have made some the media recently mistaken. Anyway, we are now coming to the Q&A session already. Thank you a lot for answering my questions. So we have a question from Josep. How old were the youngest team in XPRIZE, and what was their project? The youngest team.
I think it was what was the team, the submarine team called? The high schoolers?
I can't remember their name, but yeah, I think you kind of
yeah. Yeah, so it was a team, like they were actually, I believe they were middle schoolers. So that's what was it, like 12 or 11, 12, 13 when they started. Their teacher actually helped them start this team. They competed in the Ocean Discovery XPRIZE, which was about mapping the ocean floor. And they were able to get to the final. So they were one of 10 teams competing. And I believe they built a submarine essentially to go and map the ocean floor. And they won the judges gave them, I think, $500,000 as a inspirational prize, and they made a documentary about them as well.
Yeah,
Ocean Quest.
I think it's called Ocean Quest.
It?
Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah. So it's if you're interested, you should go and watch that documentary because it's really cool what they did.
Can you text the name in the public chat for the audience to follow?
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now. Yes, it was called Ocean Quest. Here we go. Yeah.
Perfect. So answered. Another question we got: will AI replace the actual doctors? Oh, this is a good one, especially in relation to IBM Watson, I think.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll take a stab at this, and I look for Nima to jump in after it. So this one's personal for me because my wife is actually a doctor. So I think AI will replace certain fields of medicine sooner than other, right? I think certain fields of like cancer and the cancer doctors and stuff like that won't be replaced for a long time. I don't see it as this binary thing where AI is going to replace doctors. I really think AI is going to, and this kind of gets to our entire ethos of human and machine collaboration. I think AI is going to be, is already being used, will continue to be used as a supplementary tool to make doctors better, give them more tools, more data to make better informed decisions. But I think because you're dealing with human lives, I think there's always going to want to be that human to human connection when it comes to medicine.
Hey, good answer.
Okay, yeah, I think actually this question is even wider than that only in relation to AI, because I see that many people are actually afraid that robotics will replace them. But of course, there are some certain industries, or at least some parts of industries, that can be never replaced by any robot or computer, because we will always need their personal touch, a human touch.
Yep.
Okay, next question we have. It's still related to AI replace the actual doctors. If it will replace, when do you think it will happen?
Well, I mean, I think this gets to a bigger discussion about when do we think we're going to reach general intelligence of AI, right? Like the AI that actually can mimic the reactions of a human brain, right? So I personally, I think everyone has a different answer about when we will get to AGI. I don't think it's going to happen for another 25 to 30, even 50 years. I don't know. Nima, what do you think?
Yeah, I have friends who are much more optimistic about the speed of innovation. But I think if you look historically, even when you have groundbreaking innovations like the internet was invented in the 50s and then, was in the lab for 30 years and then finally got to the public. But then that still took probably 10 or 20 years to get crazy. And now we're where we are now. So it took 50 years essentially from invention to fully acceptance. So yeah, I don't think it'll be that quick. I also think that with AI in particular, because of the this automated nature of it, it will be much more hesitant to deploy it, and there will be a lot more regulations and rules to overcome. Take self-driving cars. I think technically we probably have technology that's good enough right now to deploy in the real world, and they are testing it in the real world. But as humans, we're afraid of giving up our control. So, if Uber kills one person, that sets them back 5 years, essentially, even though, tens of thousands of people are dying every day on the roads because of human activity. So I don't think self-driving cars will be fully available for maybe another 10 years, even though the technology might have caught up. And also, I think it'll all happen in waves. So, I think they'll replace truck drivers first, or have cars in senior areas where people aren't driving as much, and then we'll slowly develop the technology as we move forward. Same thing with doctors as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the audience? Yeah, I think that this talk was quite novel to our audience. This is actually was the objective of starting this conversation. So no questions. Good. I think we are good. Thank you a lot for joining us, Niyama, Devin. It was really pleasure to talk with you. Hope that someday you will bring more prizes like that to the world because what you're doing is really fantastic. Thank you a lot for your work.
Well, thank you for having us, and please reach out to us. We're always looking to engage on ideas and brainstorming. So, you know, reach out to us. Stay involved, stay abreast of what XPRIZE is doing, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye. Okay, so next we have a little break, and then we will have one more speaker joining us, Andrei Pavlenko, who will talk about switching to marketplaces and what good it is in marketplaces for e-commerce entrepreneurs. Thank you for your attention. See you soon.